Welcome back to the annual Christmas time weather video from yours truly. Now in the past, I've created slightly more elementary type videos talking about good and bad weather by whatever subjective metric I chose at the time. But this year I'm venturing a bit beyond that, trying to capture a little bit more nuance in what I'm doing. So here I will answer the question about which states have the highest temperature ranges on average. So trying to capture a sense of volatility, because so many places claim that,
oh, if you don't like the weather here, just wait 5 minutes and it'll change.
Many people may be claiming that baselessly, and today we'll get to the bottom of that question. So more specifically, what is the gap between maximum temperature and minimum temperature for a given day, averaged throughout all days of the year? To answer this question, I've used a data set from the NOAA, temperature data, from the bulk download section for daily high and daily low temperatures averaged by day of the year from 2006 to 2020. These are called climate normals when they're averaged over a time period. So details to download this data are in the README of the GitHub repo I linked in the description. If you're not interested in that, just ignore it.
And by the way, processing the file is very difficult because the delimiter between the different fields is just blank space. But this is even though that there are cities in here with multi-part names like Los Angeles or Las Cruces, something like this. And those also are separated by white space between the words of those. So you can't just use blank space as a field delimiter because you're going to be having inconsistent number of rows and they're not going to mean the same thing. It's a disaster.
So what I ended up doing this on was the top 100 most populous cities in the United States. Now there's a caveat here because not all cities have a weather station in the city that's named after it. That's how I was able to detect the weather of a city, is by matching it with the name. But we had 82 left over. So if you're in the top 100 and not included in this list or in the output of the code, I do apologize. If I had more time and interest, I would have been more thorough. Now let's just go ahead and get into the results. Well, let's say lowest fluctuation makes you the best. So in first place then would be San Francisco, California, with average fluctuation of 11.88 degrees, which is not bad. That's actually pretty surprisingly low. Next is San Diego with basically the same, 11.9, and then a couple more kind of cities nearby water. Now, for the bottom 10, we have Denver, Colorado has the worst, at over 30 degrees average fluctuation per day, and that's really impressively wide. I did not expect that per se. And on top of this, we have cities from the Central Valley of California, like Fresno, Stockton, Sacramento, and then a couple desert cities, Tucson, Mesa, and Lubbock is semi-deserty. So more broadly, if you look at the big list of what's going on here, places right by water, whether it's the ocean or even the Great Lakes, you may have noticed Cleveland was on the lower side of fluctuations. Water tends to have a normalizing effect on temperature, making fluctuations smaller. Then below that are humid Midwestern cities that maybe don't get as cold during the night. In the desert, there are really high temperatures throughout the day, and because there isn't a whole lot of humidity to retain that heat, temperatures can drop pretty low as well. But in the Midwest, especially from my experience, it doesn't get quite as cold during the night. And then below that tends to be cities more in the south, where they get hotter throughout the day and relatively colder throughout the night, increasing the range. And at the bottom, as you saw, we have this weird intermixing of cities from the Central Valley of California with desert cities from Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, and so forth. Now, I actually thought the results of this were pretty interesting. And it's also interesting to note that where you fall on this list doesn't really indicate how good your weather is by the typical standards. Just look at Cleveland. Cleveland was actually number 4 on this list in terms of smallest fluctuation. But that's just because of the normalizing effect of being near the water, because that's where the weather station is located. If you just go a couple miles inland, it's very cold, fluctuates a lot more, and there's a whole heck of a lot of snow because of the lake effect. So you might prefer cities much further down on the list as opposed to Cleveland. And likewise, there are cities at the very bottom of the list, or near the bottom of the list, that have pretty famously good weather, like Irvine, California, Riverside, California. Okay, that's enough yapping. I want you to get back to enjoying the holidays. Thank you for watching the video, and Merry Christmas.